Did he say start?
Good morning. I'm Dr. Sunanda Samathar Corrado, co-hosting the John Telford Detroit Show with Dr. John Telford, coming to you live at 10 o'clock every Thursday morning on Wjzz Cool Tv, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Dr. Telford is a former Detroit Public School superintendent, a former world-class athlete, and conqueror of Olympic champions. A championship track coach, poet, newspaper columnist, longtime civil rights crusader, and the author of 6 Detroit-oriented books. The Poet Emperor of Earth, What Old Men Know, Creative Insubordination, The Will Robinson Story, The Poetic Prancings of Matt John, his explosive autobiography, A Life on the Run, and another forthcoming poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Applebaus, a Detroit poetic epic. He also has a show on WCHB AM 1340, Detroit's gospel station, Saturday mornings at 9:30 and Monday evenings at 6:30. That's Saturday mornings at 9:30 and Monday evenings at 6:30. His books are available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, or just calling the good doctor at 313-460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Dr. John Telford has been called a legend and also a lightning rod for controversy. He has received the Detroit City Council Spirit of Detroit Award and the Joe Louis Foundation Spirit of the Champ Award. He was named Wayne State University's Alumnus of the Year in 2001, and a Detroit track was named for him. His website is www.alifeontherun.com, and his email address is drjohntelfordedd@aol.com. That's drjohntelfordedd@aol.com. Now, without further ado, I present to you that renegading, crusading old native Detroiter, Dr. John Telford.
Thank you, Dr. Sunanda Corrada, that PhD from Columbia University, who is an anthropologist by training. Dr. Corrado has been teaching at Wayne County Community College District for over 10 years. She is currently a researcher for the Detroit Equity Action Lab, which is housed in the WSU Law School, and she is founder and CEO of Education by Design. And in the station with us today is that great All-American linebacker from Purdue University, that man who played for 3 NFL teams, and we're going to have a sports show today. We're going to have a sports show on the John Telford Detroit Show today. We're taking a little break from politics, and I'm taking a little break from, trying to break the back of Trump, although I'll probably be making some commentary about him, as is my usual custom. But also I got a couple of announcements I promised I would make. Reverend Ed Pinckney in Benton Harbor, where the tap water is poisonous now, is trying to buy 1,500 cases of water per month to distribute to residents. And you can go to BH Banco, that's BANCO, B as in boy, bhbanco.org, where there is a PayPal. That's bhbanco.org. So help Reverend Pinckney and help the residents of Benton Harbor.
Benton Harbor's water is poisoned?
That is correct.
And they live right next to the Great Lakes?
Yes, they absolutely do.
So their schools get taken over and then their water's poisoned? It's like the reverse of what happened to us. Our water was poisoned. It's us.
Precisely. Precisely.
Follow the water, you'll find politics.
Yeah, I also promised my friend W.F. Hodo. He was a Pershing grad, a Pershing volunteer football coach, really good man. W.F. Hodo is doing a write-in campaign for city council. He's running against Scott Benson, but he's doing a write-in campaign for city council. And Mr. Benson, by the way, is under investigation.
He's been indicted, right? Like a few weeks ago.
I think he's been indicted. Yeah.
With who else? Ayers and
oh gosh. can't remember.
They
all
could have
that.
done it before the primaries.
You know, there's so much corruption, I can't believe it. But anyway, W.F. Hodo is not corrupt. He's a good, honest man. He can be reached, by the way, at 313-685-6777. That's 313-685-6777.
And so far, Benson is unchallenged,
Well,
right? Without
Benson is,
Hodo.
yeah, he's unchallenged without Hodo. Hodo's I think there's another lady trying.
How do you spell Hodo's last name?
Hodo.
For the write-in.
Yeah, that's correct. W.H. Hodo, Hodo, for the write-in. And you know, last Saturday, I think it was a week ago. Last Saturday, now September the 18th, it was anyway, whatever that is. That was a full day for me because I did my show on WCHB in the morning, and then I went and did a show at the Troy Hotel.
That was a great show.
Man, that was
You were funny.
I had so much fun in that show. You know, that was Sean Fair's show, and I did that show. I told my life story. You know, I told my life story, and actually I went in the bathroom, and I wrote 3 lines for my life story, and I actually could have gone and sit down after I did that. The 3 lines went like this: there have been many good ladies that I've chased. There have been many good causes I've embraced. There have been many good runners that I've raced, and that is my life story, you know. So I could have gone and sat down.
You look like Andrew Dice Clay, and you sounded like Fred Astaire up there. It was amazing.
I was basically having some fun, and you know, now of course I'm the poet in residence again, and I'm going over to Frederick Douglass Academy.
Amazing school.
And you and I are heading over there tomorrow morning, because we got to do the show at 11 o'clock for the whole student body.
Yeah.
We'll have some fun. Blaine, I wish you'd come too. They're looking for you. You know.
You should come. It's
You-
all
you-
it's all
you won't
athletes.
listen.
All the boys are athletes.
Yeah,
It's an
we
extraordinary boys' school.
we get tested. We get a COVID test.
Test.
Yeah, we get a free COVID test.
Yahoo.
So anyway, couple other quick announcements that I got to get out of the way. I promise. You know, Denzel McCampbell is coming on this show on October 28th. He's running for city clerk, and I'm supporting him. I also support Mary Sheffield in my district for city council. I support Scotty Bowman for the police commission in District 3, I believe. And I'm supporting Letitia Johnson for District 4 for city council, and she's coming on this show on the 14th of this month. Letitia Johnson will be here, old friend of mine, and I already talked about Hodo. And I'm coming on. Oh, we're bringing Anthony Adams on. Anthony Adams is coming on the 21st of this month. He will be on.
Jam packed.
Yeah,
You got crucial candidates on your show all month.
Yeah, we got a big.
I've been on your show, Dr. Telford.
Well, you are already on my show. You're on my show all the time.
I get to meet amazing people.
Yeah, you do. We meet a lot of amazing people on this show, but we got an amazing guy right here, right now, and that amazing
Player and poet.
Yeah, and we're doing a poetry sports show, because we're gonna, I guess, do some of our poems too as we do this poetry sports show. So Blaine Smith, welcome to the John Telford Show, my brother.
Thank you for having me. It is always an honor and a pleasure. So we're ready.
Okay. Yeah, we're ready. And you know, I got a quick poem about the lions. You know?
Oh my goodness.
This poem's called "Some Lions Have Escaped," and the poem goes like this: Let's pray it won't take eons before our Detroit Lions go on the prowl, on a super roll, and then win it all in the Super Bowl. Are they going to win it all, or are they going to win it at all? You know, I don't know, but you know, we lost Matt Stafford, the great Matt Stafford. We lost Kenny Galladay. You know, we lost Marvin Jones, great receivers. We lost Ndamukong Suh a while back. We lost Barry Sanders when we had a playoff team, but he was smart enough to get out of there.
Don't forget Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, the great receiver, Calvin Johnson, man.
Megatron, I'm scared.
Man, of course, I'm from the old days, you know, when we had Bobby Lane and all those guys, Glenn Davis.
Well, that's
Bo
the
Jackson.
reason that's the reason that Detroit is so known, because in the 50s they were a dominant team. And you and I talk all the time, Doc.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while for a team to find itself. So I think we're in a good place now. We'll find out as the season go. I like the fight of what I see in the present team. I think the coach is learning as he goes, because everybody is blaming last week on a 66-yard record-breaking field goal.
67 yards is a total record.
Yeah, but I think if the coach wouldn't have called that timeout and gave the Ravens a chance to collect themselves and regroup,
totally
as
agree.
an athlete, as an old defensive player, I would never want the opposition to breathe. If I've got the pressure on them, keep the pressure on him. But I think he'll learn from that. I think the players are at a place where they never give in, and that's good to see. So that's a good sign.
They got Lion's heart. That's what happens when you come to Detroit.
That's right. Well, this guy here, of course, was an athlete. I mean, you just look at me. Maybe you can't tell. Look at him on TV. He's 6'5" and 240 pounds. And I wrote this poem that I call "No Fun," and it's actually about him. Instead of getting tackled by Blaine Smith, the old linebacker, I'd rather be gang tackled by the biggest Green Bay Packers, or else get myself run over by a 20-ton tractor. You know, I played ball at Northwestern, and I was an athlete also. You know, at Denby briefly, because I got put out of Northwestern and had to go and live with my old man. But I would never have wanted to get tackled by you, Blaine, ever. You know.
Well, we came along in the head of face tackling, where you led with the head, that's a penalty.
I got a spear tackle one time.
Yeah. That was the way they used to do it. You lead with the face mask, you bow the neck, and you strike into them and try to go through them. Don't hit to them, hit through them and drive them to the ground. It's interesting when you see old pictures of yourself tackling actual people, and it looks like some of my old photos. I've actually devoured the runner. It's interesting.
Predatory.
Yep.
You know, there was a great football player, the name of Henry Carr, and you know, he still holds the record, I think, for most touchdowns scored in a Detroit high school game. That was when he was playing for Northwestern High School, and later he was an All-Pro defensive back for the New York Giants. But that's not how he made himself famous. And you know, while we're talking about sport, this is a sports show, and we're just not talking football, and we're just not talking basketball, and there's some other sports that I just want to at least mention. And not because this was my sport. You know, I was a world-ranked sprinter, but I trained this kid, and I could not believe when Henry Carr, his coach, brought him over to me at Southeastern High School. That was way back in 1960 when I was coaching track over there and teaching English. His coach, Tom Hendricks, who had been a hurdler at Michigan, brought him over to me to work on his finish. So we were taking straightaways, and I had some kids, you know, who were really good. I had George Wesson, who was state quarter-mile champion, and we were all taking 220-yard straightaways with Henry Carr. And Henry Carr was wearing sweat clothes, and this was the year 1960, and I still wasn't taking money to coach because I was still an amateur runner. I was ranked right up in the top 2 or 3 in the 400 meters, and I was, I think, ranked number 9 in the 200 meters. So 200 meters, Henry Carr and I and some of my kids were taking these 220-yard straightaways, and he was wearing sweat clothes, and I was running my butt off, and our kids are dropping back. And I'm looking at Henry Carr, and he's going lump, 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 just you know, practically loafing. And we're doing 22, 21.8, 22.2, and these are seconds of time for 220 yards. And I could not believe what I was seeing. So I went down to the athletic director, the district athletic director, and I said, Henry is qualified for the Olympic trials. He's run a 20.6 220-yard dash. Took a tenth of a second off Jesse Owens' high school record. And I've qualified with a 46.7 400 meters. So I want to. We've qualified for the Olympic trials. I want to take him out there with me. And that was my old football guy at Denby High, whom I never really got along with, and that's a whole other story. And I don't want to talk all this time because I got Blaine Smith here, but I got to tell this story. Coach Stout, who was the athletic director then, said, he can't go. And I said, why can't he go? He's run a 20.6. Well, he'll be ineligible his senior year. He's only a junior. And I said to him, you mean to tell me you're going to make the Olympic champion ineligible his senior year? He said, what have you been smoking? This kid's not going to win the Olympics. I said, oh, yes, he is. I've never seen anything like this. I said, well, he can't go. So I went to his father. I said, Mr. Carr, can Henry Carr, I'm going out to the Olympic trials. Can I take him with me? What does Mr. Stout say? He says he can't go. Well, then I got to say he can't go too. So what happened was he did not go. The next year, as a high school senior, he tied the world record for 220 yards. In high school, there's only been one other athlete who ever did that in life, and that was Jesse Owens at 100 yards from Cleveland East Tech. And what does Henry Carr do 3 years later? He goes to Tokyo, wins the 200-meter dash in world record time, and runs on the 4x400 meter team, which had the Olympic 400-meter champion on it. That was Mike Larrabee, who, by the way, I had beaten twice when I raced him. And he ran faster than the 400-meter champion. So that's the story of the Great Gray Ghost.
What year was that?
The year that he won the 200 meters in the Olympics was 1964. But he would have won it in 1960.
That's amazing.
If they had let me take him. And then he turned pro, went with the New York Giants, made all pro, got hurt, got traded to the Detroit Lions, didn't pass the physical, and that was the end of his athletic career.
Wow.
Which was a doggone shame. But anyway, you got any read me a poem. I want to hear Blaine Smith read an athletic
commercial time.
And we are with the great poet and player Blaine Smith. You're watching John Telford, Detroit, coming to you live, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Please like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe to us and our various other programming here. And thank you for watching Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Okay, Blaine's going to read a sports poem.
All right, we've got a poem that I had written in 1982. All right. Sort of thinking back on football and the anxiety that a player feels before a game. So I penned this way back in 82, and just anxiety. Anxiety from within is part of me. The deepest of things I cannot read. Opening game kickoffs, a nervous side. Emotions, feelings are hard to hide. Anxious, waiting for time to become right. A jittery feeling keeps me wound so tight. Sadness, depression are our very way with this world. I try not and get caught as to avoid becoming distraught. Sadness is at the pit of every feeling. To avoid the emotion, one must keep straight heads in these dealings. Happiness, exuberance, feelings that makes one's day. Springtime, fresh rain, white snow makes us feel this way.
All right, and he's talking about the jitters that you get.
Yeah.
When before you're gonna compete.
But it's a big deal, especially with Simone Biles and a lot of sports stars who just like the psychology of having to compete and to please a crowd that just wants to devour you if you don't give them everything. Right? That must be pretty hard.
It's interesting.
A champion and a sacrifice at the same time, right?
It's interesting because you start sports so young that you've been told to practice hard because the games are easier. But the mental process is what no one ever tells you about because it's inside of you. Yeah. No matter how good you are, how bad you are, I'm sure everybody in the locker rooms are feeling the same way. I often tell a story that we're getting ready to play Notre Dame when I'm a sophomore, and we actually end up winning the game. And after the game, we're inside shaking up cans of Cokes because we weren't pros, no liquor. And I look in a locker and I see athletic supporter, a jock strap in the locker. And I said, Sam, damn fool, forgot his jock strap. He must be scared. When I was getting undressed, I was the damn fool that, you have your gray shorts on because to go get taped and dressed. You got your gray shorts on and your gray half T-shirt. And some kind of way, I don't know if it was the anxiety of playing at Notre Dame. I was just a sophomore. I wasn't starting, but I was one of the first guys that rotated in. And some kind of way, I never put it on. And I'm a devout guy that wears that athletic supporter. And it was me. So it's just part of it's part of the sport. Sometimes you got to laugh at yourself. You got to laugh at these feelings, but they're real. They're very real.
Blaine, you're a knowledgeable guy about sport, and I know that. And you've been, played with three NFL teams. I mean, you've been a all-time pro, but what do you predict this year for our Tigers, Lions, Pistons, and Red Wings? You got any calls for the future for these guys this year?
It's interesting with the Lions, and we talked about them at the beginning of the show. They're in a growth mode. Brand new coach. He's brought in probably 50%, 60% new players, and what he's trying to do is find out who have listened to me to change the culture. I'm pushing for people that never quit. We know we're not in a position to win, all of our games. But if they can have a successful season, it's 17-game season now. If they could go 8-9 or 9-8, it bodes well for the future.
That would be good if they.
It bodes well for the future.
We got to be realistic about this. I mean, they're 0-3 as we're doing this broadcast.
But they've got 13 more to go.
They got 13 more to go.
So I think they've got 14 games to go. 17 games. So somewhere I think you find yourself, and at this early stage, you've got to beat the people that you're supposed to beat.
Right.
If we beat people that we're not supposed to beat, that's a bonus. But
that's
teams that we supposed to beat, and see, a lot of fans are just fans, and they don't understand. In professional sports, at least football, you want to hold the opposition to 17 to 20 points. You want to score between 24 and 28 points. If you can do that, you can be successful. They've got to work on the defense. They've got to work on the offense, and those are all works in progress. I think they can have a good year if they're anywhere between 5 and 8 wins.
Yeah, they've disappointed me so many times. I mean, I've been in this city for 85 years, and I'm saying to myself, when? I remember 1957, and I remember, I think 1965 they had a pretty good chance, but we're still waiting for that Super Bowl win.
But see, Doc, me and you talk all the time. You can't associate any pro team with any other pro team because the turnover is probably 15 to 25% every year. This isn't like a high school team where the same 3-4 years you got those people trotting out.
Yeah.
Here, people are going to come, they're going to go. They're going to go because of, the amount of monies you've got to bring players in and let them go, the salary cap. It's a different thing. Every team takes on its own agenda for that season. And I'll tell you another thing funny about sports. If you're on the team, you're on the team. But as soon as you get released, nobody, probably unless you're really good friends with somebody, they're not going to even probably talk to you unless the season's over. It's a funny business.
But you know what, to talk about the Lions the other way, I mean, like, I know they're going through the rigors of trying to get this orchestra, this team together, but they've always done a lot for the schools and the communities. I know they have literacy programs, and they go on, they read in the schools, and the Lions was the first team to put on that campaign against police brutality that basketball team got all the credit for. The Lions quit practice that day, and that started a whole flurry of other sports teams acting out against police brutality. Unfortunately, some politician I really admire told the teams to back down. That was President Obama. But some of these teams are owned by I shouldn't say vicious. What should I say?
MAGA people.
DeVos, Republicans like DeVos. So, I mean, this is a Karl Marx moment where the members are making so much money that they could choose their owners.
Well,
and we push them away from that. We don't realize how powerful our players are again.
Well, labor is always powerful if they stick together, and that's what never happens.
Yeah,
everybody's
that's what you were
worried.
talking about.
Yeah,
no talking after you're done.
Yeah, everybody's worried about their paycheck, their money, because they have people to answer to at home, the wives, the families. So it's hard to really get them, because I thought at one point no African American player should have went back on the field until things were settled. Don't be, and I've got a poem in here a little bit later about us, and I didn't find this out until I was out of pro ball. I went back to Purdue to watch a game with a good friend of mine, James Bly, who was a student, and we're sitting there, and it's halftime.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, man, let's go get us some more Jack Daniels. I said, man, we got to go all the way on 52 bypass, which is like probably 30 minutes from campus. You got to get in your car.
Yeah.
He said, no, come with me, man. We walk across the street from Ross-Ade Stadium across Northwestern Avenue. Anybody from Purdue knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Got a McDonald's and a drugstore. We go in the drugstore, we get a half a pint of Jack Daniels. I put it in my cowboy boots. We go back inside. We buy 2 Boilermaker Pete cups with pop in it. Pour the Jack Daniels in it. I put the bottle back in my boot. And I said, James, I never knew this went on when I was a player. He said, hey, man, y'all were just entertainments. We were trying to steal your girlfriend.
See, this is why I want this guy to write a book. Now he's
stories.
He's got a book that's already on paper, but he's not doing anything with it. And show that picture. I think there's a camera up there.
I think it's here.
Yeah, I got that
That's
picture
me.
on. Yeah, that's Blaine when he was playing for Purdue. When he was playing for Purdue.
Picture's bigger
And,
than me.
and matter of fact, I put that picture. That picture's on Facebook with my WCHB show that I put it on Facebook. But this guy needs to write his life story. Now I wrote A Life on the Run. I wrote about it wasn't really about my running though as much as it was about my civil rights work. But this guy has got a story to tell, and it's on paper already. What's the title of that book going to be, Blaine, if you ever get it?
Until the whistle blows.
Until the whistle
Every
blows.
athlete know what that means. You don't stop until the whistle blows.
Yeah.
You can run over, and this is one thing I do like, and this, excuse me for saying this, when I found this out, I loved it. In a football game or any game, you can run over the referee if he's in the way of the play. That's why you see him getting out of the way. You can totally flatten him.
I'd rather get run over by a tractor
You
than
can
by
totally
this guy,
flatten
just like I said in my poem.
I didn't know that until I got
wow.
in college. I got yelled at for trying to avoid a ref, and I let the runner get past me. And my positional coach, Coach Bob Geiger, he told me, he said, hey, they're part of the field.
Well, if you ran over a ref, he'd be an emergency. Here's a poem called Fast Eddie, because I gotta talk about a little bit about the history of Detroit when it comes to sport. Detroit has had some great boxers and some great sprinters, and at one time that's what we were known for. That's what we were known for. There were 15 or 20 of us who were internationally ranked in the sprints. Interestingly, most of them were all of them really, except I, were African American. But Fast Eddie. This poem's called Fast Eddie, and it's not a real great poem, but the world's first fastest human broke universal records, which great Jesse O could only tie. And let me tell you who Fast Eddie was. In 1932. In the Olympic Games in Los Angeles, Eddie Tolan from Detroit's Cass Technical High School and the University of Michigan was called the world's fastest human because he broke the 100-meter record. And they called him the world's fastest human. 4 years after that, a great sprinter named Jesse Owens came out of Ohio State University. And they called him the world's fastest human when he won the 100-meter dash in record time in the Berlin Olympics. But also, guess what? He did not break the record. He tied the record, and that record had been set by none other than Detroit's Eddie Tolan, who about several years later became my gym teacher and told me I needed to run track. But anyway, that's another story.
That is a story. Yeah. Dang it, I didn't hear that one.
Yeah, well, I'll probably tell it again, 'cause I love to tell it. But
let's touch that top one, Doc.
Okay, I'm going to hit the top one.
Oh, that's right. We didn't talk about
in
the
light
Tigers.
of well, we did. You want to talk about the Tigers?
Well, yeah, because the Tigers are in season. They're playing way better than most people thought. I had a chance to watch them a little bit last night. They lost for the fourth straight time last night. But no, they're flirting with finishing the season close to 500.
John's used to winning.
Yeah, but see, I'm an athlete that learned you don't win all the time.
Yeah.
But it's the growth from coming from nowhere where the Tigers were last year.
It's like a growth spurt.
Yeah. And now they're threatening to go 500, which in baseball you play 62 games.
Yeah, 500 is good.
500 is good.
Right.
And they have about 3-4 more games left. They're struggling now because it's late in the season. The beginning of the playoffs starts next week. But I think the Tigers manager is what we need. He's got a lot of young talent. They're looking for some pitching, but I hope they don't let a lot of the young talent go to supplant the pitching. I think if they hold on, bring in maybe a couple of good arms and let that talent grow, I think we'll have something in a couple of years. And baseball is that kind of sport. I caught a little bit of the Red Wings last night. They won their first preseason game in Chicago, which is hard fought. So that was interesting.
Blackhawks?
Well, yeah. I really believe in the Red Wings because now the Red Wings have Yzerman as the general manager, and the captain, he was one of the persons that brought winning back to Detroit when we became Hockey Town.
You want to talk about the Red Wings? When I was a little kid growing up on 16th Street,
Gordie Howe.
My father invited Gordie Howe to the house. And Gordie Howe was a fellow Scot. He was my dad was born in Scotland, and my father was a professional boxer at the time, and not at the time, not then, but the year was, I don't know, somewhere in the early 1940s. Gordie Howe actually came to the house, and Ted Lindsay was also a friend of my father's, who was another Scot, and that was they called that there were three of them: Lindsay, Howe, and Terry Sawchuk, I think.
Yep.
They call them the production line, and those guys won the Stanley Cup. A lot of people say that was the greatest hockey team that ever played the game.
Old Olympic Stadium.
Yeah, but at the time, Gordie Howe was just in a rooming house over on Grand River. When they played at Olympia over on Grand River and McGraw, and I can remember talking to him. He was a real regular guy. I was just a little kid, when
that was the beauty of sports back in the old days. The players lived in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm not kicking this because when I first played, the salaries were nowhere where they are now.
Wow.
But with the salaries you have now, the players out in the burbs or in the high rises, so they are alienated from the true fan unless you've got the big money where we talked about before. Who are you rubbing shoulders with? Regular people or the elite, that 1 or 2%? Yep.
Well, here's another poem that I want to do because I call it Bullet Billy Smith, and I wrote this poem in 1958. Bullet Billy Smith was one of the 4 or 5 fastest 100-yard dash men who ever ran that came out of the Detroit Public Schools. His best 100-yard time was 9 5/10 seconds, which was only 2/10 of a second over the world record. And so I wrote this poem about Billy because Billy and I were teammates at Wayne State, and he was a cocky sucker, let me tell you. Billy, now here's a poem, and it doesn't rhyme, but it scans, it scans metrically. Billy was a 9/500 man. Tired of listening to him brag, I said, I'm going to beat you, Billy. And I did. You didn't win that 100 race, said he. All 7 judges say I did, said I. They're wrong. No, they're all wrong, he raised at me. Our coach showed him a Polaroid and said, Look, Billy, John's at least a foot ahead. Wrong angle, Billy angrily observed. I'd had a fast start, though, and his was slow. If we had raced the 100 10 more times, I must admit, he surely would have won, if not all 10, then 9 of them for sure. But you know, I was so sick and tired of hearing him brag that I said, I'm going to shut you up just as one time. And luckily, I got a good start, and he got a bad one. But you know, this guy had the world record for the 65-yard low hurdles indoors, and it took Hayes Jones, the Olympic champion, to take a tenth of a second off of that. And when Billy and a guy named Cliff Hatcher, who was my best friend in life, who had run a 48 quarter mile for Detroit Central High in 1951, when I hooked up with him and Bullet Billy, and there was a sprinter from St. Kitts named Ralph Williams who could run a 9,800, and there was another guy too, Ralph Carter, out of Detroit Northern High. He was the Marine Corps champion. There were 5 of us from 4 places on a relay team, and those workouts were wars, let me tell you. But what paid off was we went to the Ohio relays, won the mile relay, won the 880 relay. We went to the Penn relays, won the mile relay, won our heat of the 880 relay. Went to the Bowling Green relays, which I anchored in 1954 because Cliff was late for the bus. But we were beating Michigan and Michigan State, Little Wayne State. Now this is something that Detroit kids need to know about the history of track, and that some of those same guys, Bullet Billy, and a guy named Jim Bibbs, who later became coach at Michigan State and was the first one to tie Jesse Owens' 60-yard world record, and I. And a man named Pete Petros, who later became principal of Mumford High and was an executive director with me in the Burnley administration years later. We teamed up. This team broke the world 880-yard relay record indoors. This was Detroit Track Club. We were running for the Detroit Track Club, and then we went to New York, and ran on the sprint relay, made the finals, and I led off, and I gave the baton to Bibbs in the lead. And we bobbled the baton that goes on the board track, and he reached down, snatches up the baton. We went from first to sixth in about 2 seconds, but he snatched up the baton, catches the pack, and Bullet Billy on the third leg, took us from 6th to 5th. And I was saying, oh man, if Pete can just get us into third, at least we'll go home with a bronze medal. So Pete got the baton. Pete Petros on the anchor leg. The great Pete Petros, he was 5-time Michigan AAU sprint champion. He got the baton on the anchor leg, and all of a sudden, we're in 4th, 3rd, 2nd. I couldn't believe it. He leans into the tape and misses the goal by inches. We went home with silver medals after dropping the baton in a race that lasts less than 2 minutes. I have never ever seen that happen in track. But that was an unbelievable feat on the part of Pete Petros. I mean, as the anchor man, he brought us from 5th to almost 1st in a period of 20-some seconds.
That's amazing.
But anyway.
And welcome to our sports episode. We're here with the great Blaine Smith. You're watching the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Please like, follow, share, comment, subscribe to us and our various programs. And don't forget, Campbell's coming in on the 28th, Johnson is coming in on the 14th, and Anthony Adams is coming in on the 21st. And thank you for watching Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
And I'm glad that you remember to do that commercial, because I'm getting so excited having this great football player here with me, my good friend, that I forgot to remind you about the commercials.
But the sports news is real cultural news. This is really says what's going on in our minds and our hearts.
Well, you know what? Let's not forget the boxers either.
Oh, yeah.
Because this city produced possibly one of the greatest heavyweight champions who ever fought. And his name, everyone knows, was Joe Louis.
Yeah.
Joe Louis fought the Battle of the Century, which was the fight against Max Schmeling from Germany. But he also defended the World Heavyweight Championship a record 25 times. No one ever did that. Now we've had, in fact, there was a fighter that came out of this city. He was bred in this city, and his name was Sugar Ray Robinson. That many people say is the greatest fighter pound for pound who ever fought in a ring. So we've had Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, don't forget Thomas Hearns. You know, Thomas Hearns.
And doing a lot of good work around the city. With kids.
After you
and
retire.
Boxing and academics.
That's right. And
keeps giving.
And won titles in 6 weight classes. 6 weight classes. The first fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, I hate to say it, you know, I lost a lot of money on the fight because I bet on Thomas, and I was betting against a great fighter. I didn't realize how great Sugar Ray Leonard was. Although Thomas and Sugar Ray fought again, and they fought to a draw.
Wow.
And a lot of people thought that fight should have been won by Thomas Hearns, because Thomas Hearns put Sugar Ray Leonard on the canvas, and I never in my life, I was watching that fight on television. I never in my life saw a knocked out fighter get up. This guy was knocked out. Yeah, you could tell by looking in his eyes, but he got up.
Go walk out of a car accident.
Yeah, he got up. He got up and finished the fight and pulled out a draw.
Great athletes always get up.
Not tell the what whistle blows.
Sugar Ray Leonard, who was Olympic champion too,
Yep.
had an incredible heart. I mean, he was a great champion.
We still haven't talked about the Pistons, who are going into their season.
Okay, let's talk about the Pistons.
Pistons, I think it's the second-year coach who was coach of the year when he was in Toronto. I think we have a good shot at really elevating basketball and football and baseball are 2 different sports and turning a season around. Basketball, you got 5 people on the floor at any given time. All you need is 2 or 3 people to really turn the tide. I'm looking for the Pistons to be in the playoffs this year.
Nice.
Yeah, I would love to see them there.
We've got some great rookies. We've got some good 2nd and 3rd year players. And at some point in athletics, and everybody who's an athlete, as Doc talked about the sprinters and the boxers, when your chance comes, you've got to step up and do your job. And being an old athlete, that's what I look for. I'm looking for players to do their job. Because once you've trained, once you've worked out and the game starts, the boxing match starts, the track meet start, it's on. People come to see what you're going to do. We are the entertainment. So I like the Pistons' chances. Great first draft choice. We had the number 1 draft choice. We've got Cunningham, and he's a point guard. Everything evolves around a great point guard. They're the leaders on the team. They make things go. So hopefully we can have that kind of magic and excitement down at the new stadium. Yeah, so I like their chances. I really like their chances.
Detroit has been known for its basketball stars too.
Well,
and one of the greatest point guards in high school that I ever saw was a kid named Curtis Jones at Northwestern High School. And that was when I was coaching track at Pershing, and I had some basketball players on my track team. I had John Lockhart, I had Ben Dowdy, who was later played for the Baltimore Colts, and I had the great Spencer Haywood, who at one time may have been the best basketball player in the world. But we've had some really good basketball players. I was hoping that when Ralph Simpson, who was I think he was point guard on that Pershing team that won the state championship, he got traded in the twilight of his career. He was playing for the Pistons, and he came off the bench and would score 10, 12 points. But I was always hoping that the Pistons would win then, and they didn't. And then, of course, Ralph's knees went bad, and that was the end of his career. But I was also hoping Spencer someday would come with his Pistons. Spencer was my high jumper and shot putter. You know, he had that. He would take that 12-pound ball and throw it like a baseball. He'd throw the thing 51, 52 feet. I couldn't believe it. And he was also high jumping 6'2". So he was just an all-around athlete. But anyways, so you're predicting what for the Pistons? You think they'll be in the playoffs?
I think they should be in the early rounds of the playoffs. You know, it's no reason why they shouldn't. They have a collective bargaining agreement. That means anybody in a certain category is going to get paid a certain amount. And I hear this so often in Detroit that Detroit teams don't pay, and that's the problem. No, professional leagues all have what they call a CBA, collective bargaining agreement. No one gets underpaid.
Right.
Yeah, you can get overpaid if you put out the right stats. But I look for the Pistons to do well this season. It's no reason they shouldn't. You know, basketball is a different kind of game where all you got to do is put the effort on the floor. They've got enough a good mix of veterans with rookies and a coach that have guided teams into the playoffs before, deep into the championship. So it's, at some point players got to take it upon themselves, some ownership, and say this is mine. I want it.
That's right.
Yeah.
On the means of production.
Yeah.
Talking about basketball and remembering that we got a great team at Pershing. I mean, about 5 of those guys ended up playing pro ball, either in football or basketball. But Ralph Simpson, I have to say that with the possible exception of Curtis Jones and Terry Durod, I mean, he was right up there with those two guys. Terry Durod was for Highland Park, who destroyed Berkeley. When I was athletic director in Berkeley, we had Bruce Flowers there, then later played for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But Ralph Simpson was playing baseball at Pershing. I wanted him to run track because he would have been a great high hurdler and he would have been an incredible high jumper. And one day he came in from baseball practice with his baseball uniform on, in his baseball cleats. He took off his baseball cleats. The practice bar was at 6 feet 2 inches because John Lockhart was doing this. John had jumped 6'5", but he was practicing at 6'2", and he was missing the bar. So we had the bar back up to 6'2". Ralph Simpson comes into the gym, takes about 3 steps, belly rolls over the bar by about, I would say, maybe 6 or 7 inches. So he had high jumped at least 6 feet 8, possibly higher, just casually coming in. And then he's on his way to the showers, and I went and said, hey, Ralph, come here a minute. I want to talk to you. No, Coach, I'm not going to run track. So that was very frustrating because I saw a state champion just walking away. I was not able to get that kid to high jump. But anyway, so you're saying the Pistons are gonna make the playoffs?
Should make the playoffs. Hey, you're getting paid professional wages. That's a sport where it only takes 1 or 2 sparks to turn it around. Football, you need an offensive line. You need a defensive line. It's a much harder puzzle to put together, but the players still have to play. Basketball, 1 or 2 guys can make the difference. You go back through history. The Celtics were hurting until they got Bird. The Lakers were hurting until Magic came. It only takes one person to fit into that piece, and I think they can do it. I no reason not to win 45, 50 games out of 82.
Wayne State had some great basketball teams in the old days when they had Charlie Primus playing for them and Jumpin' Johnny Klein. And John Klein, again, that reminds me, he was a high jumper who high jumped 6 feet 7. But there was a jumper when I was briefly the superintendent of schools in the Madison District Public Schools, and I brought in a kid from outside. I was bringing a lot of black athletes into Madison Heights when I was the superintendent there. I got in trouble for doing that too because there were a lot of racists that didn't want the kids coming in. But anyway, there was this one kid named Ryan Aaron. He was a basketball star. And I had brought some good coaches in. I brought a coach from Denby High and a coach from Berkeley who had coached with me when I was athletic director of Berkeley. That was a great Steve Rhodes. He's passed now, but this kid Ryan Aaron was on the basketball team as a starting forward. I think he was a forward, but he also was on the track team. And I talked to him, gave him a couple of pointers. He used the Fosbury, and he went to the state meet, and guess what he did? He won the state high jump championship with a jump of 6 feet 10 inches. And there were some of the dads club that were resenting me bringing in all these guys because they were bumping some of their sons from starting positions, starting quarterback, but we won the conference championship in football, basketball, and track. Unfortunately, there were some bigots in the community that were very unhappy with me bringing all these kids in, even though I was balancing the budget because every kid that came in was bringing in $7,500 with them. But I was on Hewell Perkins' Let It Rip show, And Hugh Perkins actually is a friend of mine. He wrote a blurb for my book. Are we running out of time?
Never.
Oh, okay. Anyway.
We're always back next week.
Anyway, this kid ended up going to UTEP on a track scholarship, Ryan Aaron. But the community finally, as on Hugh Perkins' show, I found out right on that show. Hugh Perkins said, "Dr. Telfer, you've just been fired from the superintendency of the Madison District Public Schools." I found out right on that show.
Well, you said something interesting. Anytime you don't appease the alumni and the alumnus who have money and power and want to see their children play, that's when sports becomes political. Remember, we talked about that.
Purdue. You told me.
I don't.
They're saying now there's so many damn sports camps that a lot of kids who would qualify through natural talent just never make it through that seed.
And you know what that is? That's another thing. That's the money play of
like
sports.
You got to go to the Waldorf of sports if you even want to play on a team.
Mike McCabe did a report a couple of years ago and said that the guys who are going through all of these sports camps, the Detroit metro area, we're sending no more guys to Division I and Division II schools than we did before the sports camp. So what is the sports? And see, these are my bugaboos about sports as I see it now. It's the money of taking a child. You're driving all over the country in all of these play leagues.
Airplane tickets to go to another high school pool to play polo. Water. I'm like, what the heck is this beautiful stuff for everyone?
I am of the opinion that a child should only do so much of anything because the joints, the knees, the legs,
that's another
you
thing.
wear
They're getting
them
more
out.
Injuries now than they did 20, 30 years ago with all this technological innovation, the understanding of the body. The kids can't walk by the time they're 25.
My blessing when I got to Purdue was I saw the guys who came from Michigan who had been playing on AstroTurf. When you're in a locker room, if you're observant, you see a lot of things. I'm looking at guys' toes who are stacked on top of each other. I never had a major injury. I never had any of that because in Gary, Indiana, we played on grass, and that's all we had. No money for AstroTurf.
John, we need to have a show, an episode on kids, equity, and sports.
Well, it's sports. Sports have just gotten out of hand with a whole lot of things. The gambling. The sports camps.
Gambling and kids. That's what we should call it.
Gambling and sports. See, Doc said something a few minutes ago that I've never gotten caught up in. He lost money betting.
Big money. I won't even say
I learned never to bet, and when I thought I was a little smart gambler, I bet $2 on the first Ali Joe Frazier fight. All my dad gave us for allowance in high school was $2 back in the 70s.
Was it Ali Frazier?
It was the first fight. I thought he'd come back and win. He came back and lost. So that broke me up from gambling. And then as I went through the progression of getting into college, everybody tells you don't mess with gamblers, don't mess with anybody from that circle. Those are the dark people. Not dark in color, but dark in their actions. So I've never, I don't play cards, I don't play anything, and most people who know me will tell you, Blaine's a little too volatile. If you get all the aces, he's gonna flip the table over, But it's interesting.
Let me tell you.
We gotta look into this a little more.
How much time we got?
I was wondering, Dr. Telfer, are you gonna end with the poem? No, we are at the end.
Yeah, I gotta end. You know what? I'm gonna end with a poem by Henry Carr, the great gray ghost. Hannibal and Balthazar cast him stardust from a star. He was famed from near and far, Olympic sprinter Henry Carr. That man was the fastest there was. Oh, right.
And thank you for watching the John Telford Show,
Detroit,
coming to you live, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. I think it was the late, great Dr. Dwyer who said that Dr. John Telford has a warrior's heart and a poet's soul. And so please tune in next time. Next week is going to be, in fact, next month starts our politics week. We really need everybody to tune in and come in and ask us some questions of people running for office, some really good people. And, of course, we'll have the great Blaine Smith back with us, poet and player,
Anytime
with a lot of his wisdom. Yep, and we would also like to talk to you next time about the business you have for kids. About behavior. Yeah, and education. There's just so much to tap into. It's an honor to have you.
That can be a show in itself.
Oh, that's all right. There you go. Good morning, Detroit. Don't forget to get up. Just kidding.